asked me to record. I always forget this. So, anyway, I hope this concept is clear. It is pretty simple. You have a light source, you have an object. When you switch on the light source, the shadow of the object or the projection of the object falls on the screen. This is called as the projection of the object on the screen, and this is the principle of projection. Okay. Next is why you need projections. I hope this screen is seen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now the need for this projection is, see, you will have a lot of plans, a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts in your mind. If you want to convert those concepts and plans into reality and show it to somebody, then you need to make the drawings. So these projections help you to make a two-dimensional drawing or a three-dimensional drawing on a 2D sheet. See, finally, when you're drawing, whatever idea you have, when you're actually drawing on a sheet of paper, you are drawing on a 2D sheet of paper. It's a two-dimensional sheet. It is not a three-dimensional sheet. So there has to be a way, a method which will help you to draw the 2D image also, the 3D image also on a two-dimensional sheet. So this orthographic projection and engineering graphics will help you to do that. So the objective of projection is to present the exact visual description of the size and the shape of a 3D object on a 2D drawing sheet. So it helps you to make the object of the same size and the shape on a 2D drawing sheet. The object can be 2D, 1D, or even 3D. It doesn't matter. So this is why these projections are required. So as you can see in this particular example, this is a 3D object which you see on the left side, the actual object. And this is how a person has drawn the object, a 3D object, on a 2D sheet of paper. So this is what is possible by using the projections. Now there are different types of projection. There are a lot of projections involved. I don't think we need to discuss in detail. In brief, we can just have a discussion. So as you can see here, this is a particular view. Now the person is seeing the object in this particular view, so he will draw it like this. There are many things which he sees, which he can draw. There are many things which he cannot see, so he will not be drawing that. It depends on the point of view of the observer, in which view he is looking at the object. You can see another example here. You see this blue arrow. This indicates the viewing direction. So the observer is looking at the object from this direction, and what he sees is what he draws here. So this, you can say, is the front view of the object, because the person is viewing the object in that direction. So he is going to see only these portions. So this is what he actually sees in the front view, a particular view. The other things he'll not see. He'll not see this slope or what is on the back side, what is below, what is above. He'll not be able to see. He'll be only able to see what is in front. So that is why we call it as a front view. Another example you see, if he looks from the top, you can see the viewing direction is now from the top. If he looks from the top, then he is going to see this. You can see on the right side, top view. So in this top view, you cannot make out whether there is a slope, whether this object has got a height. No, it is very difficult. What you see is the length and the width of the object. Okay, so this is the front view, this is the top view. Now you might be asking, it is very difficult. See, the object is looking like this. It's a 3D object. In the front view, it is looking in another way. In the top view, it looks different. So how to make sense of it? It is very difficult. That is why to represent any object or to understand any 3D object completely, one view is not sufficient. This is very, very important. Only if you draw the front view of this object or the top view of this object, it is very difficult to make out how the object actually looks like. So that is why always it is recommended that you should have at least two views. At least two views. For example, if you have this front view and the top view of the object, you will come to know that yes, this object looks like this in the top view, and in the front view it looks like this, and there is a slope here. Otherwise, just by looking at the top view, you cannot see or make out the slope. So minimum two views are required. Minimum two. If there is another view, say third view, let us say a side view, that is the best. So as far as my practical experience goes, I always rely on three views to completely understand the object. Otherwise, just by looking at one view, it is very, very difficult to visualize and understand the object. So minimum 2 to 3 views are required. Let us say the front view, the top view, and maybe the side view to completely visualize and understand the object. So that is why we call it as a multi-view projection. The multiple views are required. So again, there are many types here, multi-view projection. This is what is important to us. If you see below, multi-view, orthographic projection, first angle projection. We'll see what this means actually. Yeah, orthographic is not shown here. Okay, anyway, I think in the next slides it would be made clear what exactly is orthographic projection. Yeah, coming to the next important thing, scales. So you need to understand that objects are drawn with their true sizes. It is not always possible to do that. See a very small object, for example, your smartphone. Yes, you can draw on an A4 sheet because the dimensions of the smartphone are less than that of the A4 sheet. Okay, but can you draw a building or a car true shape or true size on an A4 sheet? It is not possible because the building may be in meters, the car may be in feet. So they are huge objects which are not possible to make on an A4 sheet, which is just 210 mm by 297 mm. Not even 1 feet. Is it 1 feet? No, not even 1 feet. Hardly 1 feet. 1 feet by 1 feet. So how can you draw these huge objects on these small sheets? The other way around also. There are very, very small objects like components of a watch or components of the cell inside a body, micro level components like nanoparticles, nano gears, so which you cannot see with your naked eye. It is not possible to see these very, very small objects, but yet you find the drawings of these objects, you find the dimensions of these objects on a nano scale, on a micro scale. Now, how these drawings are made? You cannot see the object, but you are able to make the drawings on an A4 sheet. So both these are possible. How? By using scales, a drawing scale. So basically, bigger objects, larger objects, you can scale it down. You can reduce the scale, you can reduce the size, and you can draw it on a smaller sheet. Whereas smaller objects, very, very small objects, micro objects, you can increase the size, you can increase the scale, and then draw it on the regular sheet. That is what I wanted to address in this particular slide. So if you see a scale, basically in mathematical terms, scale means the drawing length of the object divided by actual length of the object. It is also called as representative fraction, but in general, it is called as scale. So it is the ratio of drawing length of the object and the actual length of the object. Okay. Now, if you see here, scale 1:1. That means the drawing length and actual length are same. That is for full size objects, or you can say true scale objects. Like, for example, your smartphone. You want to draw the smartphone on an A4 sheet. You can easily draw it. What is how much is a smartphone? Maybe 6.5 inches or 7 inches by 2 or 3 or 4 inches, which can be easily drawn on an A4 sheet. So you can draw it to the true scale or the full scale, the actual dimensions of the object. Okay. So at that time, the scale will be 1:1. So the drawing length of the object and the actual length of the object are same. 6.5 inch is the size of the mobile. 6.5 inch is the size that you are going to draw on the sheet also. So this is called as full scale, full size scale or true scale. 1:1. Okay, how about if you have bigger objects like big machine parts, a bulldozer or a tire you want to draw, or big building plan scale, which are in feet, which are in meters. These are all huge objects. How can you draw these such objects on the screen on an A4 sheet? You have to reduce the scale. That is what you can see the third one. Scale 1:x. Now x here stands for 2, 3, 4. That means a building maybe of or an automobile component maybe 6 feet. 6 feet in length. 6 feet you cannot draw it on a 1 feet paper. Not possible. So what do? You reduce it. You reduce the scale. So a 6 feet object, you are going to make it as a 1 feet or less than a feet object. Okay, so it will be 1:x. So you are reducing it. You can easily draw it. But you have to mention the scale. Yes, you have to mention that 6 feet of object I am going to make as 1 feet. So 6 feet becomes 1 feet in my drawing. So this is a reduction that I'm doing because the object is huge. So these are called as reduction scales or reducing scales. The other way around, very, very small object, micro object, nano objects, like these watch components and very, very small components, which are in microns, which are in millimeters, which are in nano scale, which cannot be seen. So you have to enlarge those objects. You have to say that 1 micron is equal to 10 mm, so that at least you can see. Or 1 micron is equal to 20 mm or 1 inch. So you are enlarging the object. So such scales are called as enlargement scales. Okay, here it will be x:1. So x stands for 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, the drawing length. And 1 will be the actual length of the object. So these are how the scales work. If objects are large, you have to scale it down. If the objects are small, you have to scale it up. If the size of the object and the size of your sheet are very much same, then you can draw to the true scale. So these are the scales that are available to you. As we go on solving the different problems, we'll be using all these scales. We'll be using true scale, we'll be using enlargement scale, we'll also be using reduction scales. Some line convention, yes, these are important because every line that you draw indicates something. For example, if you want to make visible outlines or visible edges, the edges of the object which are visible, then you have to use continuous thick lines, lines like this. If you want to draw imaginary lines, projection lines or dimension lines or leader lines, you have to use thin lines like this. If you want to represent hidden edges or hidden outlines, the edges which are not seen, then you have to go for these dashed lines, maybe thick lines or thin lines. If you want to show these axis lines, then this is how it has to be shown. So different line conventions exist to draw or represent different types of lines. Okay, so as we solve some problems, we'll get to know this better. So this is one example. You can see here. See, visible outlines. You can see these external lines, which are solid lines and very dark lines. These indicates the edges that we are able to see for sure. So you have to use the dark lines, continuous lines to draw such edges. Now you can see these lines, these hidden lines, which are inside, interior lines, which actually you are not able to see, but you want to represent them. So how do you represent them? By hidden lines, these dashed lines. So this is how you represent hidden edges or hidden lines. Then if you want to represent the axis lines, like you can see here for the cylinder, the center axis line, this is how you have to represent the axis line. A big line, a small line, a big line, a dot, like that. Similarly, dimension line, a thin line with arrows on both sides indicating the dimension of this particular line or the length or height of this particular line or edge. So this is how you represent the edges which are seen, which are not seen, axis lines, etc. So line conventions are very important. They are part of the Bureau of International Standards, BIS standards, and they need to be followed. Dimensioning is also very important because finally it is a dimension of the object that finally decides your design. So the purpose of dimensioning is to provide a very clear and complete description of the object. Dimensioning should follow these guidelines. So the accuracy, the values should be correct. It's very obvious. If you say a line is 30 mm, then the line should be 30 mm. So it is your job to see that it is 30 mm long, and you draw it to 30 mm, and you also represent that this line is 30 mm long. It should not be 31 mm. It should not be 29 mm. 19-20 will not work. The dimension should be very, very accurate. So clearness, the dimension must be placed in appropriate position. Yes, placing the dimension in a correct position is very important because the drawings that you make, it is not that you make it and you will file it somewhere and it is done. Your drawing is going to be referred by somebody else. So you should be very, very clear in placing the dimension so the other person who refers your drawing understands your drawing and dimension correctly. Okay. Next is completeness. Nothing must be left out and nothing should be duplicated. For example, you leave out some important dimension like the radius of the bolt, the length of the bolt, the thread size. These are very important dimensions. Without these dimensions, you cannot manufacture those objects. So your drawing should be complete. So dimensioning has to be done for each and every component. Nothing should be left out. And nothing should be duplicated also. For example, you have already drawn the radius of a particular circle. You already represented. You want to represent it once again. Not required. Why you want to duplicate? If a line or a entity has been dimensioned once, no need to dimension it again and duplicate it. It leads to unnecessary confusion. Readability. The appropriate line quality must be used for legibility. See, line quality is very important. Everywhere you cannot draw dark lines. Everywhere you cannot draw light lines. No. Where it is required to the dark lines to be drawn, there the dark lines have to be drawn. For example, the visible edges of the object, they have to be dark. The hidden edges of the object, they can be a bit light. Axis line can be a bit light. So this is how you have to highlight, or the person who is reading your drawing should feel like, yes, he has made the line quality so well that the objects, the edges which are seen, they are darker, the edges which are not seen are a bit light, so that it improves the overall quality of the drawing. So these are some of the important things that you should follow for dimensioning. And I think there is an example also. Yeah, as you can see here, this is a particular component which has got linear dimensions, which has got diameter, angle, all of that. Let us see how this could be dimensioned. So if you see the top view, this is the top view of the object. This is how it looks like in the top view. So let us try to dimension this object. So this is an extension line. If you want to dimension um, these two, that is the length of this particular line, then you have to indicate that, yes, from this end to this end, I'm going to measure the length of this line. So extension line have to be drawn first, and then you have to indicate that two arrows, one arrow on the left, one arrow on the right, indicating that I'm going to dimension in between these two. So this is a dimension line. So similarly, you can draw dimension line for the vertical line, height, for the slope. Okay, and then these are the dimension values. You can see this 20 mm, 35 mm is the, you can see, height of this or length of this particular vertical line. 70 mm is the length of this particular horizontal line. So this is how a dimension needs to be made. First of all, extension lines indicating from which end to which end you want to dimension. Second is the dimension line indicating the arrow from this end to this end, it is supposed to be dimensioned. And then in the middle, you can put the dimension value itself. How much is it? Is it 60 mm, 70 mm, 30 mm, 40 mm? So this three things constitute the dimensioning: extension line, dimension line, and the dimension value. These are the different ways in which the dimension value and the dimension line can be drawn. See, if you have plenty of space on the top, you can put the dimension value on the top. If you don't have space on the top, you can put it in between. So you have to leave some space here in between and then draw the two arrows. In between, you can place the value. If you don't have space at the top, you can put the dimension value below the dimension line also. So these are different ways in which you can position the dimension. Yeah. This is another way for vertical dimensions. You can position it either to the left side, to the right side, or exactly in the middle. So whichever style you want to follow, you can follow, but please be consistent with the style. For example, if you are following this style that you are placing the dimension value in between the dimension line, then see that this is followed for all dimensions. Don't mix them. For some dimension it is in the middle, for some dimension it is below, for some dimension it is above. That is not recommended. You get used to one particular style and use it in the entire drawing. That is what is recommended. And you can see here angles 45 degrees. So you will have to make a small arc like this with arrows and then write the value 45 degrees. So we understand that this is the angle. And this, you can see the radius there's a semicircle here, and there is a full circle here. It's a hole. So if you want to dimension these radius or these diameters, then this is how you can do. You can take out a leader line. That means from the center of the circle or of the semicircle, you have to draw a line to the outside with an arrow indicating the limit of the dimension. Same thing here, from the center indicating both the limits, take out the leader line and then place the value. For example, in this case, the radius of this semicircle is 10 mm and the diameter of this circle is 15. So radius is represented by this R, whereas diameter can be represented by D, or most of the time it is represented by this particular symbol phi. This is called as phi. So this is how circular dimensions or circular entities can be dimensioned. So basically you have to use a leader line, show the extent of the dimension by the arrow. If it is radius, it is only till here. If it is diameter, it is till both the ends, because you have to show that it is the entire diameter of the circle. Extend it, draw a horizontal line and place the value on top of the horizontal line. Same thing here, extend it, draw a horizontal line, place the value above the horizontal line. This is how you draw objects which have a radius. Yeah. Next is the arrowheads. See, the arrowheads are very important for a dimension line. So different types of arrowheads are used, as you can see here. This is an open head. This is a closed head. And this is a closed filled head. Now what we recommend is this third one, close filled. So it is closed, there is no gap between anything as you find here. And it is not open, it is completely filled. You can see the triangle. It is completely filled. This is the type of arrowhead which are generally recommended and used in the drawings. Not that you cannot use the other ones, but these are what are recommended and these are what look good on the drawing. And in general, this triangle indicating the dimension line, or this arrowhead which we call, this arrowhead has this rough dimension. So the base of the triangle or base of the arrowhead, if you say is x, then the height or the length of the arrowhead will be 3 times the base value. So this is how the arrowhead should be. So if this is say 1 mm, the base of the arrow is say 1 mm, then the height or the length of the arrow should be 3 mm. This is how you need to draw this particular arrowhead for the dimension line. Yeah. Next, another example. Drawn. So if you see this particular style, what you find here is a larger dimension is drawn first, this 50 mm, and a smaller dimension, that of this rectangle, is drawn next. And you can see there is interference of the 2 dimensions. The dimension line of this 10 mm and the 50 mm, they are intersecting each other. This is not a good way of dimensioning. Never the dimension lines should intersect each other. So a better way of dimensioning such a drawing would be like this. So the smaller dimension, you first draw it, and then you draw the bigger dimension, so that the dimension lines never intersect each other, never cross each other. You can see how different they are. This looks so good, whereas the other one looks so cluttered. So this is a correct way of dimensioning. So first go in for smaller dimensions, and then you go for the bigger dimensions. Ensure that no dimension crosses the other dimension or intersects another dimension. That leads to confusion. Lettering, I'll not go into details of this because it's not very important. But yes, if you want to make certain drawings where the letters are very important, then letters also should have some size, some length, some width, etc. And this is how you can make blocks, and then you can control the size of the letter that you draw. Okay, basically you can use grid lines and then you can do it. I'll not go into the details of this. Anyway, what I would like, or generally any teacher would like from any student, is punctuality and attentive. You need to be attentive because you need to understand the concept first and then speak out. And then, yeah, this is very much essential, which all of you have. Only thing, it has to be used properly. Imagination, yes, I feel this is very, very important if you want to make good drawings. See, drawing is something which is like a concept which exists in your mind, which is inside you. Now you have to take it out, you have to draw it on a piece of paper, or you have to model it in a software and then communicate it to somebody else. So what is there in your head has to be transfers to somebody else's head by using a piece of paper or by using the software. So lot of imagination is required in this particular subject. As we progress, you will understand. So you should be able to imagine how the object looks like in the front view, how the object looks like in the side view, how the object will look like in the top view. So this kind of imagine, because it won't be very easily seen. You have to imagine and see, okay, how it is going to look like if I move to this side, if I move to the top. So a little bit of imagination is required to make good drawings. And of course, practice. It's a new subject. So, and it's a drawing subject. It is not that you can just listen to it and then on the day of the exam you can start drawing it. That will not happen. You have to regularly practice the problems, practice the concepts. Only then you will be able to draw it at a faster pace. Because if you see the IA question paper or even the final exam question paper, always students find shortage of time. Some students do it extremely fast. Some struggle because there is lack of practice. See, you hardly have 1 hour 15 minutes, I think, during the IA test, and 3 hours for the final exam. In the 3 hours of final exam, you have to solve, I think, 5 problems. Each problem will easily take 30 to 40 minutes. So it is bare minimum time. So you need to practice. The practice is very much essential for this subject. You have to draw. You cannot only sit and listen. You have to draw. And then, of course, if you're not understanding something, you need to clarify it. Either you can ask the teacher, you can ask your friends. Always group discussions help because you get a lot of inputs from your peers, from your friends. Some concepts which you have understood, you can make others understand. Some concept which you have not understood, some of your friends can help you understand, or some of your teacher can make you understand. So you need to constantly question yourself and ask, clarify the concept. Then the things will be clear. So this is what we expect you to have, at least from the next class. You need to have a sketchbook. Now, currently, since you are at home, you won't be having a sketchbook. But what you can do is you can get a book which has got blank pages so that it is easier for you to draw. Okay. Or if you don't have a book, you can go in for A4 sheets. That also is fine. Then, but the size of the pages should be A4 because most of the drawings are big and you need A4 size sheets. Let it be in a book or in the loose form. Now, along with that, you require some basic instruments. You require pencils. I already told you 2B or 2H or HB pencils to start with. You can even use mechanical pencils. Then you need scale, you need compass, protractor, eraser, sharpener. So these are some of the essential requirements for this particular subject. So at least from the next class, once this PPT is over, then we have to actually start drawing. So for that, uh, these particular instruments are required. Yeah. Just a few more slides wherein the concept of orthographic projection will be covered. And then I think we can stop for today. See, if you remember, I hope you remember this particular screen. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So in this screen, we had clearly understood the principle of projection, wherein you have the light source, you have the object, and you have the screen. The object is placed in between the light source and the screen. So when the light from the source falls on the object, the image of the object, or you can see the picture of the object or the shadow of the object, falls on this particular screen. This is called the projection of the object on the screen. This is the principle of projection. So this is what we had discussed earlier. Now just let us understand it a little more in a better sense. I think this also we have discussed. Yeah, this is important. The objective of projection. See, if you observe, you have the light source, you have this particular object, which is basically a line with one end A, other end B. And then you have this screen right behind the object. Now, if the light source is switched on, so obviously the image or the picture of the object on the screen will be there. So you can see in this particular case, the picture on the screen is small a, small b. So if you see the size of the object and the size of the picture or the image, is it same? It is not. You can see the object is of this size and the image is almost double the size of the object. So it is not a true representation. Why is this happening? This is happening because of the distance of the object from the light source. You can see there is some distance. The object is placed at some distance from the light source, because of which the image or the picture of the object on the screen will be either bigger, larger than the object, or smaller than the object, depending on the distance of the object from the light source. Now this is a concept which is very, very important. Okay. Now if you take the light source away from the object, then can you see a small change in the size of the image or size of the picture on the screen? Yes. That means what? As you take the uh, light source away from the object, as the distance between the light source and the object increases, the size of the image or the picture on the screen decreases. This is what we want. So at some point of time, this will be the condition. The light source is at some infinite distance, because of which the rays of light which fall on this object AB are parallel rays of light, as you can see here. So when parallel rays of light fall on the object and then the picture of the object is projected on the screen, then what is the size of the object on the screen? You can see this small AB and capital AB, are they same or are they different? They are same. So the size is same. How is this made possible? Because the rays of light are now parallel to each other. If you see in the previous figures, were they parallel to each other? No, they were at an angle. So what has been done is the light source is taken at some infinite distance, and through a lens you are ensuring that parallel rays of light fall on the object. Okay, and if you see what is the angle that these rays of light are making with the object, 90 degrees. So that is why this whole concept of projection is called as orthographic. Ortho, you know, means 90 degrees. So if you read this statement, if the light rays are arranged to traverse parallel to each other, see these light rays are going parallel to each other and are incident on the screen 90 degrees to it. So they are incident to the screen as well as the object at 90 degrees, then it is known as orthographic projection. Projections which are 90 degrees to the object and to the screen. So this is the concept of orthographic projection, and this is exactly what we are going to deal with. See, the idea why we should have a projection is because we want the true dimension, the true size of the object on the screen. Now, if you have objects sizes like this, then can you make out the size of the object? The object here may be 1 feet and the image here may be 2 feet. The object here may be 1 feet, the image may be 1.5 feet. Is this the true dimension? No. So then we have to use this method of orthographic projection, ensure that the parallel rays of light fall on the object at 90 degrees and on the screen at 90 degrees. Then only can you get the true shape and size of the object on the screen. So this method of getting it is called as orthographic projection. So this is a point I wanted to make. All our discussion, let it be projection of points, lines, planes, solids, everything is based on this concept only. I'll be sharing this presentation on the classroom also. You can go through it once again. But this is a basic concept. The rays of light should be parallel to each other and it should be at 90 degrees to the object as well as to the screen. Then you will get orthographic projection. Then you will get the true size of the object on the screen. Okay. Now this may happen. See, if you observe, everything remains same. But what has changed is the size of the object and the placement of the object. You can see the size of the actual object AB is slightly more and it is no more perpendicular to the rays of light. It is inclined. Then what happens? Then the size of the actual object and the size of the image or of the picture will not be same. This is quite possible. Okay, so that is why they say that the size of the projection may either be true or apparent to that of the actual size depending upon the position of the object. So if such a situation happens, then either you will get the true size of the object on the screen or the apparent size. Apparent size is also called as not true size. For example, in this case, this actual size of the object may be 2 feet, but the image of the object that you get on the screen is 1.5 feet. So this image that you got or the picture that you got on the screen is not a true image. It is an apparent image. Okay. So this situation may happen. But anyway, our basic concept remains the same. Still you are dealing with the same parallel rays of light, and still the rays of light are at 90 degrees to the screen. That is important. So the concept remains the same. Parallel rays of light, and the light is incident at 90 degrees to the screen. So the concept, the methodology remains same. Only thing is, yes, the object is not exactly perpendicular. It is inclined. It may not be true. But depending on that, the image on the screen may be true or may not be true. See, the next thing which you might have all observed around you is what I'm showing here. The three planes, the three very important planes in between which you can place an object. If you see this horizontal plane HP, this is nothing but the ground on which you walk. Vertical plane VP is nothing but the wall which is in front of you. And this profile plane is nothing but the other wall which is maybe to the left of you or to the right of you. Okay, so these are the three planes in between which any object can be placed. So that is a concept that you need to understand here. For example, this particular object, it is a matchbox which has got some design here and some lettering here. Matchbox is written, some rectangle, two rectangles are drawn inside. And then on the right side, you are finding the color of the matchbox to ignite is a brown color or black color. So this is the matchbox which is placed in between these three planes. And you want the views of this matchbox. This is the object. You want the view of the object, the picture of the object on a particular screen. So let us see how this concept works. The orthographic projection. See here. You can see this black arrow. This is the viewing direction of the observer in the front view. The observer and the light source are in front of the matchbox. And this is the direction in which you are viewing the matchbox. So the picture of the matchbox will be falling on the screen behind it, which is the screen vertical plane, the VP. So please understand the front view you will be getting on the vertical plane. And what do you see in the front view? Only this front portion. What is that? This one rectangle, the other smaller rectangle, and these wordings, matchbox. You are not going to see anything else in the front view. So this is an application of orthographic projection. How you can get the front view on a vertical plane. Let's go further. Top view. You are looking from the top and you are seeing the matchbox. What are you seeing? You are going to see this top surface of the matchbox. You are not going to see anything else. So this top surface, yes, the lines, the rays of light are going to fall where? On the horizontal plane, HP. And you are going to get this particular image of the top surface of the matchbox on the horizontal plane. Are you going to see anything else? Are you going to see this front view matchbox or this right side dark color? No. In the top view, you are going to see only this top surface. Where? On the horizontal plane. So top view you get on the horizontal plane. This is another orthographic projection. Let us see the third one. You move to the right side. You can see the direction of the arrow. You are viewing from the right side. So what do you see on the right side? You see this dark surface, the side of the matchbox. And then you are getting this image, the picture of the matchbox on the profile plane, the side plane. Are you able to see the front of the matchbox or the top of the matchbox in this right side view? No, you're only able to see the side view. So this is a perfect example of the orthographic projections, with the help of which you can get the front view on vertical plane, the top view on horizontal plane, and the side view on profile plane. Each view is unique. Each view is different. No two views are same. So this is the application of the orthographic projection concept to a real life example, so that you can understand how unique each view is, how different each view and each dimension is. I think these other things we'll discuss in the next class. So I hope these things were clear to all of you. Now, what I would request is all of you, please, uh, in the notification, I think you can, in the message, you can put your roll number. Okay. And type your roll number for your attendance, and I think you can leave. We'll meet on Monday. I think we have the lab on Monday. In the lab, we'll be solving some problems and again refreshing these concepts. So you can put your roll number and you can leave. And if you see the Google Classroom, I have put a couple of links wherein some presentations are being shared and also a textbook, a PDF version of the ND Bhatt textbook for engineering graphics, the link of which is shared. You can download that and you can refer to it. It's a very good book. It is a textbook which you can easily refer. There are very good problems solved. The method of solving the problem may be a bit different, but the overall concept is the same. You'll get a lot of solved problems in that, plus a lot of problems to practice also. Yeah, Gauri Patil, have you put your roll number? Are you there?